You are listening to Believe in Everything Auburn, which is presented to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.ag, your number one source for all baseball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest player reports for this year's pro basketball playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your sports wagering needs. Basketball, MLB, NHL, UFC, boxing, you name it. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games that you can play right from the comfort of your home. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action, and be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE. That is BLEAV. And they're going to give you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That is betonline.ag. We so appreciate our sponsor, and it is where the game starts. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another riveting episode of Believe in Everything Auburn. Taylor Davis, Jason Campbell, the man, the myth, the legend. We back, and we're healthy. Last week, your girl was down. She was sick. The pollen had gotten to her, but we're feeling better. And just in time for a big week. It is draft week, and I obviously have the perfect co-host to talk to about this, someone who has been through the draft in a very high-profile way, and we're going to get all the ins and outs to what a draft week looks like. But for me, as a lover of college football, the draft is always so freaking exciting just to see. We literally get to see dreams come true. Like it's the coolest thing for a few days to get to watch and see where all of these guys will at least begin that next phase of their career. So we're going to send you into the week with a little preview episode of the draft. We'll dive in deeper into our expectations on our second episode this week. So make sure you stay locked in all week, and we'll catch you up on some other things happening down on the plains. But news just broke before we started recording, and I got to ask you about that first. Aaron Rodgers is apparently heading to the Jets. So give me your literal, initial thoughts on this, because you literally just pulled up your phone and it just happened. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, it's about time. Definitely about time. This has been a soap opera for so long between Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. The last 3 years has all been about, hey, is he going to stay? Is he going to leave? He's not there working out with the guys, so they're giving him time away. So this is just something, if you're Green Bay, you're trying to build your football team, you have to have your young guys and your veterans there together, and especially at the quarterback position. And like I said, change of scenery sometimes is good. I think in this situation, Aaron has been at Green Bay for a very, very long time, and this may reboost his energy level. This may get him more excited about playing football again by going to New York. It's a big city. He's still a single man. Get a chance to kind of just focus on ball and kind of enjoy. There's a lot of nice restaurants. I know that for sure. So it just changes it just kind of gives you a boost of energy. If you're a Green Bay, then you have to feel good too, because y'all had a great run together. And not when have you ever heard of a great ending of
I know.
in the NFL between a player and a franchise? It very rarely
It's
happens.
hard. Yeah.
Joe Montana ended up from the 49ers to Kansas City. Jerry Rice ended up leaving the 49ers, and he played for multiple other teams. So it very rarely happens. So this is a situation that's not shocking, but I think Green Bay now gets a chance to see what they have in Jordan Love, with his contract coming up very soon. So they need to put eyes on him and see what he can do.
Was any part of you expecting that he actually might just retire, or no?
I think he would have retired had they won the Super Bowl. But also, Aaron has over $50-some million this year that he's supposed to make in his salary. And that's a lot of money to go home and sit on your couch. Even though you made a lot of money, that's still a lot of money and guaranteed to just say,
nah, I'm good.
I don't need it. Like you know, because the older you get, the more you realize how hard it is to make some of these finances. And I didn't see him walking away and leaving that on the table.
That's fair.
So I wasn't shocked that he didn't retire, but I'm not even shocked about the trade. Honestly, I thought it was a year too
Yeah.
late. I thought it was going to happen last year, honestly.
Yeah. Are you surprised that it's the Jets, or you think it makes sense?
No, it makes sense because the Jets have a really good defense. They're a young football
Receivers.
team. They got really good receivers. Their core is there. If you look at the division, New England doesn't scare you as much anymore.
Fair.
Miami's a good football team. They've added some weapons this year, but still doesn't scare you a whole lot. And then you look at Buffalo. That's the team in that division that is kind of like, but have they peaked already? Is the question. But the Jets is the up and coming rising team. So if you go by quarterbacks just in that division, then you have to say, Tua's been injury prone. If you think from a standpoint of Buffalo, it's going to come down between Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers.
True.
I really think so. I think that's going to be I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun for football this year. We'll see what happens, but you're putting a veteran player though with a bunch of young players. So
it's true. I'll be interesting if it kind of mirrors the Tom Brady to Tampa situation, where maybe he ends up getting a couple other veteran guys over to the Jets with him, the way Tom did, got Gronk out of retirement, like kind of put a couple pieces that he's comfortable with and confident in with that youth and that newness of this team. And look, it led to a Super Bowl for Tom, so it could definitely work. But as far as the details of the trade, the Jets get Aaron Rodgers, pick number 15, a 2023 fifth-round pick, which will be 170. And then the Packers get pick 13, a 2023 second-round pick, sixth-round pick, a conditional 2024 second-round pick that becomes a first if Rodgers plays 65% of the plays. Solid trade, good terms.
Well, they had to agree to something. No one's going to give up their first round picks, as many as I think Green Bay was trying to get for a quarterback that's 38 years old and a quarterback that's saying he has thought about retirement. Once you start to think about retirement, you're getting close to retire. So I think Aaron is looking at this as a 2-year window where he'll go to New York, he'll play with the Jets for 2 years, see if he can win a Super Bowl there and compete for one. And after that, I think he's retiring. He's moving on regardless. When you think about, it's better that it happened now. Because I remember years ago, Brett Favre got traded to the Jets, and that happened in August. So he didn't have the off season to prepare with the players and everything. So Aaron now getting traded in April, and before the draft, they get a chance now to look at their draft in depth and see like who they need to draft at what positions to fill this roster up, because they know we're not building no more. Now we're going for it all for the next 2 years. So it's going to change some of the dynamics. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets trade some of their picks, trying to get some veteran guys to come in and be on their roster with Aaron. So the timing fits.
It does. And like you were saying, sometimes you need new scenery, new environment, because I do think, Aaron felt slighted even back to the Jordan Love pick, and the way the Packers were clearly kind of preparing for what was next, which was smart, but it was almost like he wasn't in the know about it, and he felt a little slighted when all of that transpired.
Green Bay is a storied franchise that they run things very well. They're football, they don't have ownership. So it's kind of ran by a committee. So it gives that room an opportunity to sit in there and talk details and build a franchise, because they did the same thing with Brett Favre and they drafted Aaron Rodgers. Brett Favre was kind of felt slighted because he didn't feel like his play had dropped, but they was already looking for the future. They did the same thing with Jordan Love to Aaron. So, that's just how they do things. They prepare rather than falling behind and then saying, oh, let's try to figure it out. So you can't get mad at the franchise for doing that. So you have to respect game.
It'll be interesting to see how this next chapter unfolds for him. Just had to get your input because it literally broke right before we started. But speaking of next chapter, a lot of guys are going to be entering that this week. The NFL draft is upon us, happening down in Kansas City. Well, I guess out, not down, in Kansas City, my former home for about a year. Shout out Casey. And like I said, we're going to give our picks, top 5 Auburn guys, where we think they'll land. But I just wanted to sit back and have a little story time from J Cam, because us peasants have no idea what it's
Oh my
like
goodness.
preparing for a draft. And no, I mean, I think, it's so highly covered
Oh yeah.
Thursday through Sunday, right? But like, and we know about the combine and the pro day and all of that, but like this last week before it all happens, what was this week like? Because it kind of was the last week before, your life changed, truthfully.
Yeah. Whew, I tell you, this week was an exciting week at the one time, but then nervous at another.
I'm
Just
sure.
because one, you're excited about getting all this combine, everything's done. Now you get a chance to see what city you're going to be playing in, where you're going to be living at. You're just excited about getting going, getting to the next step. It's been like 4 or 5 months since your last game for most of these guys, and you're used to training and working out with a team to prepare for the next season. But during this time, you're preparing as individuals
by yourself
to by yourself to better yourself in the draft and to get yourself prepared for whatever team you're going to get drafted to. So the scenario changes from a mentality standpoint. Now, the nervous part about it is anything can happen in the draft. Somebody could tell you, hey, you're projected to go, here or there, but you really don't know until those picks start rolling in, because it's all about what teams need at the time that they need them. So it makes it really nervous because there's a lot of families, people have parties and everything, and you've seen some of these parties be very, very good. People are excited. You see tears, you see dreams, you see guys, everything they've been dreaming of since they was a child become reality.
Yeah.
And then the other part, you've seen the part where families gotten together and the kid didn't get drafted and was projected to get drafted. And, and then you have and they have to sit there and like live through that moment. That's tough, so it's kind of hard because you want to be so excited, but nothing's set in stone until your name is actually called. And so this week can be a little bit of a rock and roller coaster for most of them. If you're a top 5, top 10, 15 draft pick, you're not as nervous, because you're going to go somewhere within those top 15 picks, and that you're going, like you can kind of start living your life a little bit, because what your contract's going to kind of look like too, because they're slotted. But I tell you though, like it is a surreal moment, and for a lot of guys, some of them will be in Auburn. I was in Auburn during draft week.
Were you?
Some guys would probably be in Auburn as well. Some guys.
Where'd you watch it?
Oh, where I was staying at. So my family and everybody, they came to Auburn. And so we watched it there. And some guys did it at their homes. I remember Carlos, he was in Augusta. Ronnie was actually at the draft. Cadillac was back in his hometown in Gaston, Alabama. So everyone was kind of spread it out and everything. And but what a surreal moment for these guys.
Who was the first teammate that you talked to once y'all all knew where you were going?
Well, I actually congratulated my former 3 guys that went before me, Ronnie, Lack, and Carlos. And people don't know this, but we was the first team ever to have 4 first-round draft picks in the SEC. We was the first SEC in college football to have 4 first-round draft picks on one team. We also was the first backfield in college football history to have all 3 guys get drafted in the first round. But there was some history made that year, and I just congratulated those guys. And they was like, hey, you're Nets, and everything. Because for me, it was anywhere between 15 and 25. I didn't really know, at that time. And, so for me, it was once I got wind of when I was going to get drafted, because I got the call from Washington, and they said, hey, if what's-the-name doesn't take you 4 picks before, then we're going to take you at 25. And that was the whole year that, you sit in there and you're like, okay, so I leave, I walk out, I leave my family and everybody in the room. So I already knew, like, once I get to 25, if I don't go here, then I knew the next 4 picks was like different. They wanted different positions because those teams were in play. So I said, all right, I just step away for a little bit, get away from the noise. Everybody was in there watching TV. So when it got to 25, immediately my phone rang. And Coach Gills was like, hey, Jason, how you doing? Are you excited? It's come, your time is here, and we're so excited to get you here, and, and everything. And, you're just, like pumped up, but I'm away from everybody
Okay.
at this time. So they still hadn't announced it yet on the screen. So after I finished talking with him
Oh.
and I finished talking, with my coordinators and everybody, and then once I hung the phone up, I kind of sat there, and then when they said my name downstairs on the TV, everybody jumped up and it got loud. And then everyone was looking for me, and then I finally walked down and walked into the room. And at that time, I hugged my mom and dad. My brother and
Oh,
sister was there, and then I went out back. All my high school friends and college buddies. My receivers were there, Courtney and Ben and all those guys was
I
there.
love it.
Norman Shadu. So they was all at my house. So I go outside and I was talking with Coach Borges and my parents. And at that time they called back and I was talking to them again, Coach Gibbs and everybody, and they wanted to talk to my parents this time. So
Oh,
yeah, so it was a good moment. There's a picture, not a lot of people see it, but I still have a picture saved. One of the photographers was at the house and he was taking pictures, and my mom was sitting there crying with a hand over her face, and my dad was
oh,
laughing, and Coach Borges
I'm
was
gonna
kind of
cry.
sitting there with his hand on my shoulder, and I was sitting there big cheesy, on the phone, and it's just one of those moments that I would want, to relive again with a relative or somebody,
Totally.
because it is a surreal moment.
And I think that's really cool that you had that in Auburn. I didn't know that. I didn't know that you were in Auburn for the draft. And so to kind of have that moment in the place that prepared you for it essentially is really freaking cool. Okay, so you had reached out to those three to congratulate them. So then did they blow you up once your name got called?
Yeah, they blew me up and told me you can still hear noise in the background of their homes though, because it was still loud and
Party
everything.
time.
But with that still comes pressure. Immediately after that day, it really turns to like, okay, they're calling you. You're on a flight the next week. Well, first of all, they fly you up there the day after the draft, and you take your pictures. You talk press conference. You do all those different things, and then once you're done with the press conference, then they fly you back. And this is the first time I got on a private jet. They pick you up in their private jet, and they fly you up. And once they drop you back off, they say, "Hey, we'll be flying you back up next weekend for a rookie minicamp." So
Wow.
you have rookie minicamp for 3 days, and then you have a couple more days off, and then you're right back that following week. And now it's rookies and veterans minicamp. So it gets happening pretty quick soon after the draft. So you celebrate, but then it's time to get to business.
Yeah, you really hit the ground running. Nowadays, when we're watching the broadcast, the guys that opt to stay home for the draft, a lot of them have cameras in their house that are being fed in for the broadcast. Were they doing that when you got drafted?
They weren't doing that back then.
No.
I
Okay.
wish they were. All the memories of like who was there and at
Yeah.
the time, but they didn't have all that now. I tell these guys, I say, man, y'all have everything nowadays. They have cameras, of social media,
Literally.
people making money off of it too, because you have
Mhm.
companies saying, hey, we put a sign in the back of you, and when they come to draft you, we'll pay you
Marketing.
dollars, or so marketing. So it's all like, changed now.
It's crazy. And it also gives us those incredible moments like CeeDee Lamb snatching the phone out of his girlfriend's hand. So, we get gold like that too. So I can't wait to see the viral moments that happen in this year's draft. But nonetheless, real quickly, a little transfer portal update, because this is the final week that the transfer portal is open. It closes on the 30th. Today is the 24th. Not a ton of movement still has happened since we last spoke for Auburn. Like we mentioned, Tavares Dawson entered the portal. He is actually now committed to Cincinnati, so that is where he will be going. Jeffrey Imba, which we talked about last week, linebackers Powell Gordon and Desmond Tisdale, and linebacker Cameron Brown, which is Derek Brown's brother. All of those guys have also entered the portal. Now, what I think is also important to keep in perspective, Jay, is, this coaching staff is, yes, definitely open to adding pieces, but they're still going to be intentional about the talent. Okay. It still is quality over quantity. And I actually saw that less than 3% of players inside the top 500 players in the country right now are currently uncommitted. So less than 3% are highly touted caliber athletes that don't have a home right now. So it's not like there's just this crazy influx of big names happening right now. I think there's a misperception when it comes to that. Now, Jordan Hudson, TCU wide receiver, Brennan Thompson, Texas wide receiver, and a recent addition happening, I believe, yesterday, Colorado wide receiver, Montana, Lemonius Craig. He has entered the portal, and supposedly Auburn is a potential for him. So those are some of the biggest names, probably the top three that are available right now. Cincinnati quarterback Ben Bryant has also entered the portal, as well as Utah State quarterback Bishop Davenport, who has ties to Philip Montgomery. Montgomery actually tried to recruit him at Tulsa. So that is currently what's going on. Still no update on TJ Finley and his plans. I'll just leave that at bay. But it is expected that this transfer cycle, whenever it concludes this weekend, is going to break the record number of departures in the FBS that last year's cycle set, which was 3,083. This year's is expected to surpass that. So we still got a few days, Jay. It could certainly happen. And, more names could enter this week.
Yeah, the portal's probably, like I said, Saturday is the deadline, I believe. So you're probably going to see a lot of action take place Wednesday, Thursday. There's a lot of conversations probably taking place right now with coaches and their players, since a lot of teams finished spring ball up last week. So, there's a lot of exit meetings going on. And sometimes these kids end up in the portal because maybe it's a mutual decision to go elsewhere. So I do expect some more names to hit the portal this week. This is kind of like the expected and new thing every year. But a lot of these kids really need to know as well that not everybody finds a home.
Exactly.
And, all these schools that was trying to get you or whatever, getting on the phone, trying to talk through other people to get you to come there. And then all of a sudden you enter the portal and then they're not there.
Now what? Mm-hmm.
Now what? Now you can't even go back to the other school that you was at because they feel like a commitment was broken. And and you can't get mad at them because, this is a committed type thing. I want guys that want to be here. So this is a tough deal. And, college football also changed the rule this week too. The clock will continue to run after first and second down. After first down, and D1 and Division 2. Division 3, it will stop like it normally has. But so there's a lot of changes right now, Taylor. You got the transfer portal, you got the rules changing. I think the rules trying to speed up the game a little bit, except for the 2 minutes, it will stop. So we'll see what happens with that because it seems like it's NFL is what it seems like, even in all aspects of the game.
And the XFL implemented a lot of that too. The clock steadily moved, but they had the 2-minute breaks that were consistent. I personally don't need college football games to be shorter, but that's just me. I guess I'm just obsessed with it. So I don't know. MLB, let's freaking crank that out, okay? But college football, I know they're working on it too, the pitch clock, thank God. But nonetheless, we'll keep an eye on the transfer portal this week. If any updates happen, like Jay said, it probably will be more like back heavy to the week. And then we go right into the draft.
Transfer portal. There's a lot going on.
Basketball has added UAH transfer Chaney Johnson. He is a junior who joins with 2 years of eligibility remaining. He is making the jump from D2 to the SEC. And I feel like this could end up being such a cool story. If he has some stellar breakout season, like that's a freaking feature piece waiting to happen. And he played high school ball at Thompson, so definitely familiar with the area. He grew 4 inches once he got to college. So he wasn't heavily recruited. He was kind of overlooked, gets to college, grows 4 inches. He becomes conference player of the year, like balls out. And now Bruce Pearl is giving him the opportunity on one of the highest levels of college basketball. So really, really cool story.
Like I said, he grew 4 inches. So in high school, the reason a lot of these schools weren't on him because of his probably height. Really, like he's grown and his body has caught up with his athleticism. And I think this could be a really, really good story.
He was announced as a guard, but there is expectation that he could play the 4 alongside Jalen Williams. Now, Jalen has also announced that he is declaring for the draft. Same thing that Janai Broome is doing, declaring for the draft, kind of seeing where they sit in that while maintaining their college eligibility. So they still could come back fingers crossed that they both do. Chaney Johnson is now the third addition this offseason for Bruce Pearl and co., joining freshman point guard Aiden Holloway and FIU shooting guard Denver Jones. We are currently competing with Missouri and Miami for small forward transfer Matthew Cleveland. He has said that Auburn is in his top 3. And we have officially announced Corey Williams as a new assistant coach who was previously at Texas Tech. So there is your quick basketball update, but there is also a baseball update for you that is happy news because the team, Comeback Kids, once again, just a personality trait of a Butch Thompson coached team apparently is no quit. They scored 9 runs in the final 4 innings on Sunday to come back and take this series from Mississippi State, winning 12-11. Just a crazy ending to that one. They are now 7-11 in SEC play. Now they head to Columbia to play South Carolina this weekend, who currently has a 34-6 record. Auburn sits at 5th in the West behind LSU, Arkansas, Alabama, Texas A&M. South Carolina holding the top spot in the East, barely above Vanderbilt. Yet again, the SEC is just stacked this year. It is ridiculous. But Butch Thompson says, I hope that they're sitting at number 1 or 2 this weekend, because if we're going to start to garner any kind of respect for what we do, it has to be against teams like that.
No, Butch is a, strong-minded, encouraging, energetic coach. And the fact that this season, he knew there was going to be some roller coasters. When you lose 5 pitchers from last season and everything, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. And now he's in a situation where they have to come back from a lot of these games, because when you're in a learning curve, you have a bunch of young baseball players, they kind of like try to feel the game out. You can't go into a lot of these games trying to feel them out. You got to go into the game ready to put the bat to the ball and ready to feel the balls. Yeah, you got to play with some intensity. Sometimes baseball can be a little relaxing, but I do feel like this team has an opportunity to learn so much this year. I was just sitting here looking at right now. I was looking, okay, I Irish, who I had the pleasure to talk to a few weeks ago.
Nice.
He's been named the SEC Freshman of the Week for the first 2 weeks of the season this year. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. Now Cooper Murray has been named the SEC Player of the Week.
Okay.
So we have guys that are getting recognition, and now it's just about trying to piece it all together. And that's like we said, the SEC is stacked this year. There's some veteran teams out there. LSU, the pitcher they have is throwing over 100 miles per hour. I'm just like, this guy, he's tall, and he
could be playing in the bigs right now.
Right. And that's what everybody say. Everybody say, why is he not in some Major League Baseball team right now? So Auburn just got to get back. They just got to continue to keep fighting and continue to saw wood. But, this is a season I think will help them, not maybe this year to get to where they want to get to, but who knows? Mm-hmm. Baseball is all about getting hot at the right time. Look what happened to Ole Miss last year.
I was just about to say that, Jay.
Yeah, Ole Miss got hot last year, and they just took off. So if the same thing can just happen. So if I'm these guys, don't count yourselves out. Just keep competing, keep playing, and anything can happen. You just got to get hot and see what happens.
And the flip side of that is, just because you got hot doesn't mean it continues into the next season. Ole Miss pulled off a national championship run last season. They're sitting at the bottom of the West right now. And so definitely hope that our guys can continue some momentum. I know that this series definitely gave them a little spark. So hopefully they'll ride that spark to Columbia. Before we close it out, we are absolutely going to dive more into the draft on our second episode of the week, but for a little teaser, just to make sure all of our listeners come back, Carolina is the number 1 overall pick. And as we all know, Carolina desperately needs a quarterback. They have needed a quarterback even when they've had a quarterback. It has just been the tale of their seasons. So they're the number 1 pick. Zero expectation they're getting anything other than a quarterback. If you are the Panthers, Jay, you're on the clock.
Yeah.
Who you getting?
It's going to come down between Bryce Young and Stroud. I think both of these guys, present themselves very well. I think it helps Stroud to play against Georgia in the playoffs. I really do. But you got to go with Bryce. For many years at Alabama, They haven't had the defenses that they're used to having where they kind of, keep teams low scoring. They have to outscore a lot of people the last 2 seasons. And even with Will Anderson on that side of the ball, this guy has still, has been there. He's made some clutch throws after clutch throw and clutch plays. So it wasn't because of Bryce Young, the reason they hadn't been in a national championship or had a chance to compete the last 2 years. So I just think it's just hard. I know a lot of people beat him up about his size, but the one thing I know about this kid, his heart. When I saw his Heisman speech, when I saw how he carries himself, the way he talks about his teammates, the way he, he's the type of guy I want leading my franchise. He's not a me person first. He's the team person first, and then he worries about things that he can bring to the table. That's what you need at that level. The game has changed, Taylor. Back in the day, people would say, yeah, it's hard for him to play in a pro style offense. But now it's changed. They want you to run. They want you to move around. These offensive systems now are RPO games where it's kind of stick the ball in the running back's belt. If a guy comes up, you throw the ball behind him. So the game is changing. It fits his type of style. He's almost like a Chris Paul in a point guard in the NBA.
Yeah.
And, because Chris Paul is a small guy, but he played with so much edge to him, and he's been doing it for years. He's been a multi-time All-Star in the NBA for years. So,
yeah.
I wouldn't pass up on Bryce Young in this situation. I would probably say Bryce. I know you sitting there with that smirk on your face because you probably going the opposite, which I'm going to ask you. But why wouldn't you take Bryce Young?
His size.
Yeah, but you're playing in a division that's not defensively oriented. You know what I'm saying? You're playing against the Saints. You're playing against Atlanta. So
the Panthers need a lot more than a quarterback. I'll just say that. The Panthers have gotten rid of a lot of, their most, reliable target, DJ Moore, was part of the trade that got them this first round draft pick. So his targets are also going to need to be established. If you bring a guy like Bryce in, who I totally understand the skill set that he brings does translate to the league way better than it did back in the day. But the nature of the game of football is still the wear and tear that it's going to put on your body. We heard Derrick Henry say this a few weeks ago. No matter how good you are, the NFL is a different world than college football. You have to have time to adjust and assimilate and learn. And if he does not have the pieces around him that are going to protect and allow him to get adjusted, I think his size becomes an even bigger disadvantage. I think CJ Stroud is more what they're going to be able to plug in with the personnel, his style of play, his build, and what they're going to ask him to do, I think would adjust a lot better. With that said, I think the Panthers are going to draft Bryce Young. And I do think that his character and his leadership ability is what the Panthers need, because that team has lost its way, and it has lost its fandom. It has lost its identity. There has been so much turnover on that team, and they haven't had a real identity, a real stout face to the program in years. So I think that for a variety of reasons, Bryce Young is going to be the fit, but I think long-term, who would have a more successful career on the field, I think it would be CJ.
I'm talking about those are strong opinions. I'm talking about I wouldn't disagree. I would just say
both can be true, Jay.
Both can be true. But you hit on something when you talked about leadership. Jalen Hurts, for example. It's not like Jalen threw for all these gazillion of yards in the playoffs before they got to the Super Bowl. He had like 2 games where it was like 120 yards passing or something like that. But his leadership, as his teammates said, was missing during those 5 games. I believe he sat out when he was injured. And the team kind of hit a little sput, or they wasn't looking the same. And people were so talking about statistics and everything. But for him, it just goes to show you, like, his leadership amongst that team was bigger than stats. And that's why I say I think Bryce Young going to Carolina, I think, one, you need some excitement to get fans in the stands.
You do.
And who got the bigger name right now, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud? Bryce. So there's also a marketing element to this thing. Carolina's not crazy. They know they're not winning the Super Bowl next year or the year after that. Like, they know they got to build this thing up. So right now they need to get people back in the stands and get people behind this franchise. And you do that by you draft a kid like Bryce Young. And then there's not the pressure of, oh, we're going to go to Super Bowl this year or Super Bowl next year. They know you have to build this roster out. So I just think if you go with CJ Stroud, you're still getting a really solid quarterback, but you're not, I understand he's a really good leader too, but you're not getting the fans and the people behind this thing to get people excited about coming to Carolina. Think about when Cam was there, doing all the Superman stuff and everything, like
the best.
And he was the first pick, so it just made fans want to come to the game. You have some good guys on that team, but you need some leadership in that locker room, because when they got the interim head coach, they look like a totally different team they did with Matt Rule was there.
They did.
So why your guy Jalen Carter is not up there?
He's at 2.
Everybody's automatically saying Panthers are going to take a quarterback. So
yeah, they will.
What happens if Bryce or CJ doesn't go number 1?
Their struggles on the offensive side far outweigh the defensive struggles. Like they took JC Horn with their first pick last year, and he's great. And they've got DB. I mean, Derek's definitely been a stud for them, and will continue to grow. So I think they know if you have the number 1 pick, you have a plan in mind. And even so, they initiated a trade with Chicago to make that happen. They're doing it for their biggest problem, which is the offensive side.
And you look at it, everyone's talking about Anthony Richardson. The thing about it is, yes, he's a big, huge talent. And I think a lot of people like to compare him, to like a Cam, because he's a big, strong guy. I would just think, from as an accuracy standpoint, like I said, if he can continue to try to improve his accuracy, which is a huge deal in the NFL, is accuracy. But a lot of people are trying to put him above those two guys.
I mean, the guy's got raw athletic ability, but if he throws a back tuck one more freaking time on a football field, I'm going to lose my mind. I don't care that you can flip, bro.
That's the thing about it. You know why these kids doing that, right?
To showboat.
Yeah, everybody's trying to become more marketable for NIL dollars. That's why it take mentors, it take leaders, and a disciplinary, someone that's steady, like you said, which brings me to Auburn before we get off.
Okay.
Auburn is now in a position, I feel like, to change the narrative. We've had 2 really rough seasons, and immediately the impact has already been felt under this new coaching staff in recruiting and transfer portal. I still think that from a leadership standpoint at the quarterback position, once we can hone in on that, I think we'll have opportunity to really be better this season. We got to worry about winning first. So I think if this football team can lock in, start thinking about winning, and I think the leadership gets to a point where it needs to be. Everyone always think quarterback has to be the leader. Your quarterback should be a leader. He needs to be a leader. But until he can get there, other positions got to carry that weight. And that's why I think Justin Rodgers come in this year. That's why I think Luke Deal comes in this year.
I like that.
I think those 2 guys, they walk it, they talk it, and I think guys will listen to them. So I think that's where we're at right now. But we're not far away, though.
I agree. I definitely think we could pleasantly surprise people because expectations are all over the place. Only time will tell. So we will wait and see. And time will tell where a lot of these guys begin their career in the next level. So we are so excited to get closer and closer to that. We will preview this one and get you caught up for it. We also may have a special guest. If it doesn't happen, I apologize. But our plan is to have a special guest for our episode on Wednesday. So with that, we will say goodbye here on Believe in Everything Auburn, presented by Bet Online. Make sure you subscribe, everybody, if you haven't already, so you can get a notification every time we release an episode. You can also ring the bell on YouTube. Give us a like on there and a comment. Say War Eagle. You can find us on social media. Interact with us. Let us know what you want on these episodes. And then come on back on Wednesday for our heavily influenced NFL draft through the eyes of Auburn alum episode, hopefully with a special guest. And I think that is everything until we talk again. War Eagle, Jay, always a pleasure.
War Eagle. Jeez.
Peace.